My name is Khalid Bey. I'm the chair. Also, other members of the committee on the call, Councilor Pat Hogan, 2nd District. I'm trying to see if I don't see Councilor Carney yet. We also have Councilor Latoya Allen, Councilor Rita Paniagua. We have our, I see Councilor Ryan White has joined us also. We have our city auditor, Leda Maroon, from the administration, Jen Tiff, Eric Ennis, and we also have our clerk, Mr. Panis. And so, Jen, I believe Jessica sent us 2 items for economic development. Am I correct?
Yes, I got 2.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we can get started. Appreciate it. Is nobody here to present?
Good afternoon, Councilor. This is Jeff Harrop with the City Zoning Office. Sitting in for Heather, I'd like to present SP 2101, which is a special permit for a restaurant on property situated at 1001 East Fayette Street. The City Planning Commission approved the special permit application on February 1st, granting 7 waivers from the zoning ordinance with respect to the off-street parking, on-site curbing, street line treatment area, sidewalk width, and arterial setback, lot width, and lot size requirements. This property is situated at 1001 East Fayette Street, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Also joining us, Councilor Joe Driscoll. Any of our committee members have any questions on this item?
I don't, Councilor.
That's pretty straightforward. Councilor White?
No questions.
Any other councilor present have any questions? Sorry. All right, hearing none. I have no problem with this item moving on the agenda. Councilor Hogan?
Yes, Councilor.
Councilor White?
Yes, I have no objection to it moving forward. Thank you.
Jeff, next item.
Oh, and I think that's your item.
Okay,
Yes.
Councilor Bay, committee members, thank you. Owen Kearney with the City Planning Division. I'm here regarding I believe the second item on the committee meeting today, and that is a request to enter into a contract with Bergman Associates. It's a planning, design, engineering, architectural firm for work, planning work focused on the lakefront area of the city. The city received a grant from New York State called a Local Waterfront Revitalization Program grant the grant is focused on waterfront communities and providing resources to those communities to evaluate how to improve those areas and improve them from an economic development standpoint, from a connectivity to the water standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint. And so upon receiving that grant from New York State, the city solicited services through an RFP for planning services. We had a really great response to that RFP. Our RFP committee met multiple times, held interviews with 4 of those respondents, and ultimately selected Bergman to perform the work. So I'm before you today to, 1, answer any questions you have relative to that process, but 2, ultimately ask for your approval and authorization at the upcoming council meeting to enter into this contract.
I appreciate it. Oh, and just a couple of questions real quick. So just for clarity, is this property the same or separate from the properties that Core possess?
So this, and I'm happy to share a map of the area, but it is really focused on an area bound by really as far west as Interstate 690, up along the lake shore. It includes the ballpark, the regional market, kind of comes down along Interstate 81 across Spencer Street. So it really includes the whole Inner Harbor, the mall, the Roth Steel site, the ballpark, the regional market, city parks facilities. It's looking at that whole area. It's not necessarily just focused on a specific site or a couple sites. But to answer, maybe to get right to your question, Councilor Bay, it does include the mall property.
So, and this is just for clarity of why, I guess I'm trying to understand it. If the property is owned by Core, and if the other properties, for example, over there is owned by Destiny, why are we doing the project? Why are we contracting or doing the RFP?
Well,
Sorry.
Sure, it includes a lot of different property owners. Obviously, there are two very big ones in that area, but it also includes city property, state property, the waterfront, the lakefront, Onondaga Creek Walk. It's really looking at trying to develop a plan for that entire area. You're exactly right. We're going to have to work directly with all those property owners.
Right. That's what I'm assuming they are working together with.
We will. We haven't started this work, but that is priority number one is outreach to those property owners, both large and small. But they will very much have to be involved. That's correct.
Okay, and this is my last question. This is just for clarity. I know that Core, for example, had its own plans that it was working on relative to the water. In its area. Are we assuming that they'll join on? Is there some law I don't know about that obligates them to join on?
There's nothing that would obligate them to. I have spoken to them about the project, or at least some of their staff, and they have expressed interest in working with us on this. So I'm hopeful that they'll be involved. I think they really need to be involved to have this be a good plan. But your points are very, very valid, that we have a lot of large property owners out there. And we're looking to work with them all to make this a strong project.
Okay, appreciate it. Any other councilors, Councilor Hogan or White, have any questions?
I do.
Well, go on, Councilor White.
Thank you very much, Councilor Hogan. I'm wondering what types of changes or plans can we anticipate? I guess to ask that more succinctly, what all is going to be envisioned in this project?
Well, good question, Councilor. The plan is, and the process is something that is very much a formulaic process that New York State has developed as part of this local waterfront revitalization plan. So there's inventory and analysis, sort of what are the resources, what is in this area, doing really a comprehensive look at this area, what are the water resources, property ownership, all of that stuff is analyzed. Extensive public engagement is part of this, which obviously is something that is going to be interesting as we're sort of hopefully moving out of just strictly virtual public engagement and perhaps returning to some in-person engagement, but engagement of the public, engagement of property owners, engagement of stakeholders like Onondaga County and New York State, the ballpark, the regional market, to large assets in this area where we're going to have to coordinate with them very closely also. But the process is very much laid out by New York State about what communities need to do as part of this program. Ultimately, the goal is to develop recommendations and specifically, Councilor, projects that would help further those recommendations, those projects are then eligible for state funding to implement them. So it's very much localities, municipalities do the planning work, do the analysis, get local buy-in, adopt this locally, tee up, whether it's 6, 8, 10 implementation projects, and then those municipalities seek funding from New York State for those projects. And for what it's worth, many communities or have done that or are doing that, and it's a really great way to get stuff built, quite honestly, with New York State funding.
So if I understand you correctly, that this portion of the program is simply to use this grant to study what should happen in the future.
That's simplified, yes, that is correct. This is a study, an evaluation with recommendations and those recommendations would be eligible for future funding.
Okay. And as we look towards the future and potential future funding, is there anything required in this LWRP program that is going to require these local property owners or otherwise these big corporations that are going to be benefiting from this to contribute to this process, either by funds or in co-planning or just something to make sure that they have skin in the game?
Yeah, there's no requirement that they commit funding, Counselor, but there's very much an encouragement to be involved in this. I think it's to their benefit to be involved. We're going to seek their involvement, but specifically, there is no financial contribution that they're going to be required to make, at least in this part of the project.
Council, you all set, Councilor White? Look like he's frozen. Councilor Hogan?
Thank you, Councilor Bay and Councilor White. Owen, whatever happened to the, I'm a little confused, but that's sort of my state of mind nowadays. What happened to the old lakefront plan? We had an old lakefront development plan. Will this supersede this, or we layering onto it, or what are we doing here?
This will essentially update that plan. From what I understand, that was done, that was also funded from New York State. That was something that was done, I think, in the late 90s. And this would supersede that. I don't know if that's necessarily the right word, Counselor, but it would surely be an update to reevaluate this area. There's been a lot of investment in this area, as you're well aware, since the late 90s, and a lot of potential additional changes. And so this is a plan that's going to kind of look at current conditions and make future recommendations based on those kind of what's on the ground and what people are planning in that area today and in the near future.
Well, I just want to, at the end of all this reevaluating and planning and everything else, will this be something that will have to be codified by the council? Will we have to vote on it?
It's my understanding that, yes, the community does have to adopt this plan.
Meaning the city council will have to adopt this plan?
I would, yes. I'm sure the council will have a role in that process.
That sort of makes it a little more palatable to me, I guess, because I think to Councilor Bay's point, I think this is sort of a bridge too far, as a matter of fact. I mean, I just think it's a lot. We're asking a lot of this whole planning process. If we're encompassing a lot of territory, you're aware, of course, that the promenade around that lake is, as part of the bid proposal years ago, is remains state land, state canal land, correct? Owen?
Yes, I am familiar with that project.
Okay. Well, I'm just, as long as we're going to have a final say on this, I guess I can go along with this in my new vision of the lakefront. I'll see how this plays out. I just want to emphasize, I think we should be, whatever comes out of this, that I think we should be as nimble and as flexible as possible, allowing sort of like this property continue to redevelop and not throw any more obstructions or prohibitive rules and regulations against what might become of the lakefront area.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the point of my question. And yeah, Councilor Hogan, appreciate it. These parcels are already owned by these organizations, and kind of putting a plan in place. But Owen, you said you guys have had discussions with them. But I guess we'll be interested to Councilor Hogan's point to see how it's presented. Any other councilor have any question?
Councilor, I just have a point. Owen, did you check to see if there wasn't an update of this plan in the early 2000s when Destiny went in? I thought it was updated at that time, but I could be wrong.
I thought it was as well.
Yeah, I can take a look at that and advise.
I was just, oh, sorry, let me turn on here. Oh, and I was just curious. We saw some articles recently about the precarious state of Destiny. How is that going to factor into your planning? I mean, I guess I'm just, it seems to me that, it was on shaky ground before. COVID has dealt Destiny a pretty hefty blow. And I think they're relying on, sales jumping up to 200% of what they were pre-COVID in order to make things work in the long term. So I'm heavily skeptical. So I'm just curious how will that play into this discussion? Because that's obviously like kind of the biggest player in the room in a lot of ways, and its future being so uncertain. I'm curious how that factors in.
Yeah, Councilor, we are going to be engaging their leadership team in the planning process and looking to have them involved. As I said, both them and some of the other large property owners. So they are going to be involved in that process. What they do with their land and their holdings is largely going to be their decision. But there are potential, I think, outcomes of this planning process that really could be attractive to property owners, to business owners in this area. So I would encourage you and Councilor Hogan and Councilor Bay to look at this perhaps more as an opportunity. It does bring, economic development is a big focus of this. Enhancing assets is a big focus of this, and ultimately, being eligible for additional state funding is something that really could help us see changes. I mean, some of the biggest changes out there from a municipal level, things like the creek walk, have really been successful, and I think we could see other things like that, maybe not just limited to infrastructure, but other things like that grow out of this. So. I'm kind of going a little afield of your question, Councilor Driscoll, but we do intend to include them in our discussion.
Appreciate that. No, that's good. Thanks, Owen.
Thanks, Councilor. Any other councilors have any questions, concerns? Councilor Hogan, how are you with this item moving forward to the agenda?
I'm okay with it. I have tremendous faith in Owen's planning ability.
Councilor White.
Well, for the record, Councilor, thank you.
Councilor Bay, I am more than okay with this moving forward.
I am as well. So I believe that was the only two items we had for this meeting. And so with that, we're going to adjourn until whatever's next. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finance at noon.
So, Councilor.